Hey, it's John. I'm going to give a quick overview of an approach towards defining a problem and a solution set in product development. So first, a very simple overview. You've got some kind of goal. And with most goals, you're doing it for a reason, a why. Now, during your quest for that goal, you'll have things that you think you need to do and things that you think you shouldn't need to do. So let's just call this while without. And finally, you have a solution in mind, and let's call this by. So you have a goal, you have a because, you have some things that you think you might need to do or not need to do while you're doing it, and you have a solution in mind. So let's take an example. Let's say I want to make $70 today. Seems like a decent thing to do. Well, why is that? Why do I need to make $70 today? Well, let's say I have a friend, Bill, he's coming in from out of town on business and I want to make sure that I can take him out to eat. So I'd like to take Bill out to dinner. Cool, sounds pretty simple. Well, what do I have in mind for this particular thing? The first thing is I don't really want to travel. I don't want to do physical labor. I don't want to work after working after 5 p.m. Sounds decent. I want to keep the overhead low. And I want to make sure that I have fun. So we have some things that I want to do and not do while I'm trying to make $70. But it's important to lay those out and make those more clear. So let's explain my thinking. Because I assume two things. I assume that travel will cost money. Who knows? Maybe I can find a way to travel without it costing that much money. And I've assumed that travel will cut into my work time. I'm not sure I can earn $70 if I have to travel an hour each way, for example. Now, how about this physical labor thing? Well, how about because I hurt my back? I know that. So because I know I hurt my back, it's impossible. It's just not negotiable. How about this without working after 5 p.m. thing? Well, because I know my favorite show is on then. And frankly, because I assume I can't get this on Netflix. I could be wrong. Now, how about this overhead thing? Well, I'm kind of assuming two things. Because I assume I don't have available funds, I might be able to borrow the money. Who knows? And I assume that I might lose my money. So I don't want to get too far in debt with what I'm doing. And finally, while having fun. Well, I know myself really well. So because I know, I'll get bored. Otherwise, probably won't finish the job if it's not fun. So we have a why. We have some things that I want to try doing and things I want to try not doing. Let's get to the by. So these are some solutions. So for example, I might want to try a lemonade stand. Another idea is some freelance web work. Can always do that. Might not be able to get a customer in time though. Or I could borrow the money. Who knows? Maybe I don't even need to work to get this particular thing. So what about this lemonade stand? Why do I think that's a good idea? Well, because with, without, and by. Well, because I think that it's going to be hot tomorrow. I've seen the weather, so because I assume it will be hot tomorrow. And what are some things that I want to make sure I do or don't do while I'm doing a lemonade stand? Well, frankly, I feel pretty strongly about this. I don't want to use powdered lemonade. So without using powdered lemonade. And there's kind of two reasons because of that. One is because I assume, let's see, moving over here, because I assume people will feel cheated. I'm not sure about that. I might be able to get away with it. And I also know, let's get here. Whoops. Let's go back to here. So because I know I don't like the taste of powdered lemonade. That clears that up. Now, I'm going to get down to some details of the lemonade stand. Lemonade stand is a pretty broad idea. So what are some details here? Well, first, I think I'm going to charge $1. I think that will make sense. And I also think that I'll sell 100 cups of lemonade. And I think I could get away with paying $30 for supplies. And I think that I should set up at the end of the street. And as mentioned above, I think I'm going to use fresh squeezed lemonade. Now you can continue this process deeper and deeper and deeper. So for example, charging $1, I could add a because. And I say, I assume because, let's say if I just have an assumption here. So because I assume, well, that $1 is the sweet spot. On and on and on. So here we are back at the big picture. And what we've really done here is created a linkage between our various constraints, the why, and our solutions such that someone can understand the big picture here. And they can understand the moving parts. They can understand why they're doing this. They can understand what constraints they're operating under and if there's assumptions related to those constraints. And they can understand how the solutions themselves also are in themselves problems, each with their own why, with their own constraints and their own details. So it collapses very nicely. And if you just collapse all this right up to the top here, you can go at any level of detail here. And it all starts to fit in as you're doing it. So, you know, most businesses are not just trying to make $70. Most businesses are trying to do something slightly more challenging. But what you understand here is that this would work equally well for a SaaS company or another company. So at any particular point, you might have a couple goals and these might lay in with each other. So, you know, you've seen the technique, but just in very briefly. So let's say if we wanted to increase ARR to $6 million and in the next year, that might be that goal. And why do we want to do that? Well, perhaps we want to demonstrate our growth potential. And, you know, there's a lot of ways that you could increase annual recurring revenue that may or may not be what we'd want as a company. So for example, in the while section here, the while and without section, you might state some values. So for example, one might be without having greater than 10% of professional services revenue. Another one might be while keeping employee morale high. Sometimes a chase of sales can bite into employee morale. It can be difficult to grow that quickly. Another one might be while continuing to innovate. You don't want to get so stuck in the weeds trying to close each of these deals that you don't think about innovating. On and on and on. And as we did before, each of these has assumptions that are pretty important for the team to understand. So without, sorry, I put without having. So here you might say, because we assume, let's say you assume a couple things. One, that maybe professional services would be distracting. You might also assume that it will sap employee morale. Maybe not. But let's say that you know that your investors might not look too kindly on all that professional services revenue. So we might say investors might not appreciate that revenue. So you can see here that it's this exact same idea. What you're doing is you're really explaining how this fits into the big picture. And you're allowing the team to understand the thought process and also insert their own concerns in here and make sure that they're leveled off of each other and being very explicit about it. So one thing about increasing ARR that fast might be that you might cause some customers to churn. So you might say, without letting churn percentages increase above 5%. You don't want to lose 5% of those churn opportunities. And again, because we assume that might, indicate, a poor growth model. On and on and on. And in this particular setting, again, we've started this increase ARR to 6 million in the next year, which is this top level goal. But you can understand here that even under that goal, we start getting secondary goals, for example, while keeping employee morale high. And so if you continue this model, you can do because, you can do while without, and by, and on and on. So maybe there's ways that you want to make sure that you keep the employee morale high despite these particular things. So you might want to say, for example, sustainable work pace, few interruptions. So it's really up to you how you want to structure that. Obviously, you could have made another goal around keeping morale high, or if you had a goal around communication or another thing, you could do that. But it doesn't really matter for this. It's very open structure that you can do. And the nice thing about this is when you have a team member wondering how everything fits in, you're very explicit about what your assumptions are. And you can actually build a roadmap off of this by having some items that you think about doing. Maybe on this high level you want to increase ARR to this amount of money. You might need to hire more salespeople. You might need to try new marketing channels, etc., etc. So each of these aren't what people would call solutions yet, but they're kind of problems and solutions. So hire more salespeople is a general solution, but it's not getting down to specifics. And when you say try new marketing channels, you haven't described what the marketing channel is yet. So again, you could go deeper because you assume some stuff, while without, perhaps you don't want to, without tarnishing brand. Maybe that's very important to you. And then finally you have some buys. You have those different marketing channels you want to try. It might be you have a new, SEO strategy that you want to play out, and you might want to also start doing more conferences. So hopefully this gives you an overview and doesn't go too in depth. This is like a flexible mind mapping strategy. But when you have these done, the goal would be to keep these fluid, keep these always on the wall, adapt them as new information becomes available. And as you keep learning and as you keep proving these assumptions, and disproving these assumptions, you're able to collaboratively as a team, keep on target without forming a strategy that is, overly optimistic or not kind of rich in its detail. And that's about it. Thank you so much.